I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction, and then we're going to turn it over to Matthew, who is going to walk you through some exercises to kind of give you an idea where we're headed, and he'll talk to you about what we're going to do with the data and what data we're collecting and why. What I want to do is spend just a few minutes talking about school in general. You know, if you think back about change, I rode to school on a yellow school bus, and we still have yellow school buses today. And so many of the changes that we do in education are structural type changes. They're not changes to really how we do business, but they're changes to the structure. And it might be bus times, it might be start times, stop times of school, it may be the length of the periods. And if you'll think back about as you grown up and think back into times before some of you, obviously, into the 50s. If you were an auto mechanic in 1950, we use 1952, that was the year I was born. In 1952, if you were an auto mechanic, could you come from 1952 and jump to 2015 and be successful? You wouldn't have a clue. If you were a doctor or a nurse in 1952, could you jump into modern medicine and be successful in an operating room? And the answer is no. If you flew a plane in 1952 and jumped to 2015, could you fly those planes? And the answer is no. One of the few occupations that really we could probably jump other than computers is we could probably bring a teacher from 1952 into our classrooms. And other than technology, they could survive. And so what happens is, if we look at the world around us, it's changed a lot. And what happens in schools are change prone. People are always trying to change schools because it's political. They're always trying to change schools, but schools are change inept. And we don't change much. That's why you still see the school buses as they are today, maybe. This is a school bus in another country, and it's a Microsoft school bus. So when those kids get on the bus, this is what they're sitting down to. And we've even had discussions of how we're not going to have a Microsoft bus, but how might we adapt and change? And one of the ways that we talked about it is, what if we put wireless on our buses? So a student that has a longer bus ride hops on the bus, able to open up their Chromebook or their Mac and get some homework done while they got a 45-minute ride on a bus. Or in the morning, they want to get something done before they get to class and send it off to the teacher. We've talked about places where we don't have good internet penetration. Over by Hackberry, for example. What if we took on the weekends, on a Friday night, Saturdays, Sunday, parked a school bus with those wireless access points over there and let people in some of those neighborhoods that maybe can't afford the internet access to actually be able to let their kids log on? Because we talk about 24/7 learning. Only people that is learning 24/7 is kids that have access to the internet. Those other kids, they just have a computer which maybe has information on it, but it's no different than a book. They can't research. So we got to maybe learn from some others and what we might do. And then we know that we're ahead of some other countries. Things are still as they've always been. And for those folks, that may be their yellow school bus. That maybe in 1952, that's how they went to school, and they're still doing that. So there's lots of different ways that we can get to school. The clue is what happens when we get inside our schools and what changes might be there. The reason all those faces popped up to start with is that we want to make sure that whatever we do, we address every single child that walks through our doors, regardless of race, ethnicity, ability levels, likes, dislikes, that we're able in some way to address every child that would walk into our doors. And so that's why you're going to see a lot of different faces that pop up there, and we'll talk about every student, each student, individual students, and eventually they end up in a big group. And what we have to do is, how do we have and what do we have in place to make sure that each one of those individuals that we saw pop up, when they show up in that bigger class, how are they taken care of and what are we offering to make sure that they get the best education they can? Our job should be that when kids walk through the school doors, that we offer every opportunity that we financially can afford to offer and structurally afford to offer, that we shut no doors to kids. That when they walk across the graduation stage, that when we shake their hand, or as a board member you shake their hand and congratulate them, diplomas handed to them, that we can look ourselves in a mirror and say we did everything possible to give a value-added education to that child. And if we can't, then we need to rethink what we're doing. Part of what we're trying to do here is set out a plan to say, what are we going to do to ensure that we have everything available that we feasibly can give to our kids. Obviously, we know finances gets in the way. If we had unlimited money or within reason, there are so many things that we could do, because money does make a difference. And we all know that. The world's changed. We talked about that. There's the National Spell Bee check. Here we got a kid. And you know, that's not so far off. Isn't that true? Write your paper and email it to the teacher. Or you got your own website that you've built. So it is a different world, and we are changing. And some are still holding on to the past, and we have to be able to help them. And for the kids that are right there versus that child that gets the book, and I love books. I love to read and would much rather have a book. But for those kids that are coming from homes and environments that are not advantaged, they're what we call school, or what I call school-dependent children. I mean, they're dependent upon the schools to get lots of stuff, social, emotional. It may be the safest place they come to every day. It's a place, it may be the best meal of the day, the safest place for them to be. And so we have school-dependent kids, and we have kids that come from advantages that they're okay. They're going to make it irregardless of what we do. And so it's important that we offer everything that we can. So through this process, phase 1 is confirming commitment and readiness. We move through that phase fairly quickly, and that phase is basically saying, are we ready for change? Do we want to have change? Do we want to do different things and do it in a different way for our kids? And I think the answer to that is obviously is yes. People want change. They want it to be the very best that it can be for our kids. And so I think the commitment's there. The readiness levels are there. I know from a central office staff, we have people that are so capable of leadership and so capable of doing great things, and we just have to put the organizational piece around it to cause it to happen. So what we're at right now is the strategic planning process. And in that process, in phase 2, is we're going to do the strategic planning, and then I'll show you another slide in a minute. I'll explain this a little bit further. Action planning, and then we take that to the board and ask for approval, and I'll share that. And then phase 3, which can be as big as any, is making sure that we have the capacity within the organization to carry it out. And we have a wonderful professional development person here, and that will be a lot of her responsibility in terms of coordination, not actual delivery all the time, but making sure that we have the organizational capacity to carry out the things that we say we're going to carry out. It's one thing to say we're going to do it, but it's another to actually get it done. And so we have to make sure people are at the level to carry it out and not just use buzzwords that they've read or heard, but actually know how to do it. And so we'll spend time with that. We have to get all of our strategic actions part of the system. And when we systemize things, what it means is if you went to Chavez Elementary and to Prestwick and to Lakeview or wherever you want to go, you would see basically the same system running all the way through. It wouldn't look different. And just in my visits on campuses today, it was interesting to hear people using different language. And this happened to be one in the area of student motivation, classroom behavior, student management, whatever you want to call it. And different people using different systems, and some saying, well, we really don't have a system. Well, as a district, we should have a philosophy of what we're going to do and then train people and help them with that. And then if we did that, then we know that our strategic actions are aligned. And then we have to continue to create the system. Another one in my walkthroughs of going through campuses and talking with folks, they're talking about, oh yeah, we did that at one time, but it kind of just went away. Or we started it, but we never were really trained in it, so people got frustrated and gave it up. We can't allow that to happen. And so what we'll do in our development is go narrow in terms of initiatives, but very deep in what we do. And it'll all be research-based of what we're going to use, but we're not going to do all this. And to do all this is what I call a Christmas tree school district. If you look at a district that does everything in the world, it's like looking at a Christmas tree. It looks all beautiful on the outside, but if you get behind the ornaments, there's empty branches. And so you can do all this stuff, and it doesn't make a difference. People might like it, they think it's neat, but is it really resulting in spending the dollar in the best place to make a difference? And so that's kind of phase 3, and that happens after we get the plan in position, ready to go. So here's what the process looks like. We're going to start with defining what our core values are. What we believe in has to frame everything that we do. And Matthew will talk a little bit more about core values. He's going to have you do a little activity with those. Once we know what our core values are, and those are those things that we're going to stand for, we'll drop down and we'll develop a mission, or vision, excuse me. And our vision is, what do we want to become? What's our, Jim Collins, if you read, he wrote a book called Good to Great, but he also wrote one before that called Built to Last. And in that he talked about having a BHAG, and a BHAG is a big hairy goal, audacious goal. What is it that people would say, what? You guys could never do that. Well, that's what your vision has to be, big enough that people would almost look at you from the outside and say, you can't do that. You could never become that. Because if it's smaller than that, then it doesn't motivate people to move forward. And so we'll have a vision. And the key with any of this is to continue to talk about and develop. Then we'll move to the mission. Our mission is, why do we open our doors? What's our core purpose? And from that mission, then, when you tear a mission apart, it's called unbundling a mission, you create goals. Because I should be able to add all these goals back up. And if we do all those and meet all those goals, then we should meet our mission, which will move us closer to our vision, again, all framed in our core values. And so out of our mission, we'll develop goals, and we're going to look at 4 categories to develop goals. Again, one of the things that's important to understand is strategic plan is just that. It's strategic, it's not comprehensive. A comprehensive plan, that's why too many times people write very comprehensive plans and nothing ever gets done because there's so much. And so what you do is say, at this point in time, what are the most important things for us to work on? And so we'll set goals in 4 categories, which Matthew will take you from core values down to our goals. And then there's strategies to accomplish the goals. That will be the work of the strategic planning team, which meets on March 25th, 26th, and half a day on the 27th. And those are pretty intense days from 8 to 5:30 on Wednesday and Thursday, and 8 to noon on Friday. And what that group will do is develop everything you see above the dotted line. And Matthew will talk about the work that you will do tonight where that comes into play. Once that's developed, they're turned over to action planning teams. And what the action planning teams do is now get all the nitty-gritty. If we're going to accomplish this strategy and this strategy and this strategy to reach that goal, what action plans? This is the actionable part. And you hear about SMART goals. You have to add this, this, and this together, and you'll have a SMART goal. But we break it down into really fine points so everybody understands. These action plans, well, this is where we'll actually time bound everything. So it'll start out and say, we're going to start this in the fall of 2015, and this is the person that's going to head it up, and here's what they're going to do. And that will all be laid out. What we do on the board approval part is above the line, we ask the board to approve this piece. The action plans, we need to keep this active, because we need to be able to change it to react. One of the reasons strategic plans die is because they're inflexible. This is the flexibility part, and every time we changed a date or changed an action, we'd have to go back to the board if it was a board-approved document. So from there up, the board-approved. This is on the ground, the daily work or weekly work or monthly work that takes place. Again, if we work our way up, add all the action plans up, that makes the strategy, get all the strategies, we reach the goal, we reach our goals, then we're accomplishing our mission. If we accomplish our mission, we move closer to our vision. You never accomplish a vision, you only realize a vision. As soon as I see it, I'm going to stretch it further. You remember at the board meeting when I did the rubber band? That's what that's about, is saying I'm getting there, I got to go higher now, because there's always got to be that creative tension that causes us to reach higher. So that's kind of what the strategic planning process looks like. These teams will start and meet starting April 7th with a general overall meeting, and the facilitator of each one of these groups will report back to the main strategic planning committee, this group up here, May 22nd. Then we'll have time to rework it all about a month, and then we'll bring it to the board in July. We'll roll it out to our campuses. When they come back, they'll have the core values and our mission posted in all of our schools, in every one of our schools. So anybody that walks in would know these are the core values of this district. And so what we have, instead of a school system, is what we want. We want you to walk in any building, know I'm in a Little Elm ISD building, because that's the core values and the mission of that school district. And then when we get all these, that's when the work will start in the fall with those. And we'll roll some of this out at convocation to our teachers and staff in terms of particularly our core values, our vision, our mission. We won't get into the nitty-gritty of this piece because that gets a little deep. But these are the pieces, and we'll spend more time talking about it. It isn't about being on a piece of paper, but it's about living it in their hearts. So I've kind of gone through some of those activities already, again, down to the presentation in July. So this is a comment I kind of start out with the change inept, even though we're change prone. It's often the memories of past school experience that keep transformational change, and I highlighted transformational. We have a lot of what's called transactional change in education. I mean, we just do the same thing a little bit different. We really don't transform. I would say that the STEM Academy is a move toward a transformational model because of how it's set up and how we do education different than what we've done before. But typically, we have a hard time with transformational change in schools. What we do is somebody comes up with a new idea, we just add it onto the plate. I feel sorry for our teachers sometimes because what we do is we give them a plate and say, here's what you need to do. Oh, by the way, put this on it. Oh, by the way, put this on it. And we never take anything off of it, and we expect them to be superheroes. And so we really need to look at what we can do transformationally to make a difference. So with that, we feel that it's everybody's job to improve education. It's the community's job, it's the parents' job, it's the kids' input. We have on that strategic planning committee 5 or 6 kids that are part of that committee. They're our customers. They know what's happening every day much better than most of us. So there's lots of things. Some of these are things that they consider to be 21st century skills, which I think is funny since we're 15 years into the 21st century. They say we got to prepare the 21st century kid. Well, what have we been doing the last 15 years? So with that, we just have to be the ones to step up. And here's the hard part. Leadership, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a board member, whether it's a parent, whether it's somebody who's getting paid to chose that as their career, they're all leaders. And the key is, how do we bring people together? And here's the key words: to want to struggle, because it is a struggle. Because we have lots of obstacles to go through. So we have to have people who are willing to want to be a part of it. And it is a struggle, but they have to have shared aspirations. The problem is, if you don't know what your aspirations are, how can they be shared, and how do you know what you're struggling toward? And so that's what one of the things the strategic plan does, is put together, this is what our aspirations are. When I did strategic planning in another district, actually it was called Aspire 2022, and it happened to be a 10-year plan, which I don't believe in, but they'd already started it. I named it Aspire 2022 based on the fact of what are our aspirations. For us, it's a matter of how do we make this a destination district? And I've talked to the board about that. What is it that when somebody comes out and says, hey, I want to buy a new home, and I want it to be in Little Elm ISD? What do we have to become so that people have that on the tips of their tongue? And there are already people that do, because I've met them, that love so much about Little Elm ISD. I ask everybody I run into that's been here very long, why have you stayed here and worked? Why do you continue to stay in Little Elm ISD? You've been here for X number of years, and you could have gone here, you could have gone, what kept you there? And it's the town of Little Elm. They like the community, they like the diversity of the community, they like the diversity of the schools, and they feel like people know who they are. So as we're growing, how do you keep from losing that? And one way to do it is to bring people together to struggle for shared aspirations, because then we're all on the same team. And so there's a lot that we can accomplish off on that. So we talked about the destination. I know that they picked up the destination in kindergarten. So you start to use that term, and I thought that was, how cool is that? Isn't that kind of neat, destination kindergarten? And then you think about other stuff that we can add the destination. And so now we have a theme that we're tying it all around. And what does that mean? And how does that bring us together? And so what we're about is destination excellence. And with that, I will turn it over to Matthew, who's